All sizzle and no steak so far from the promised nationwide shutdown by the EFF today. The crowds have been slowly growing, though, in Durban. The EFF and some unions protesting against blackouts, and they want President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa to resign. Mobile Madlala tracking the story for us on the ground in Durban, eThekwini. Mobile, good afternoon. What's the latest on the ground?
Good afternoon, Bredan. So you would know that the protesters started in Berea Road earlier this morning, and they started their march, which is in a form of a protest, chanting and, of course, dancing and singing along West Street all the way to Beachfront. So that's where you find ourselves now, by the beachfront. You can see, Bredan, the scores of people have now gathered around the beachfront, and they've stopped on the road where they are now just singing, and others have decided to rest under a tree. But we do know that they'd said that they want to walk towards the M4. So we will see if they are going to move from where they are. They're still asking for those things, Bredan, electricity to be looked into, load shedding. A lot of them saying that it's stage 1 today. They're very hopeful because of that. But also at the same time, they're also asking for the president to resign. But they're echoing their calls, of course, by singing and chanting and continuing to be part of that protest. But interestingly, Bredan, we have seen quite a very strong presence of the police. We've seen SAPS, which is very much visible in a lot of numbers. We have seen K9 units, in terms of security as well. We have seen SAPS, which is POP, and the general SAPS that is here also to assist. We have seen the Metro Cops as well taking part in this. We have also seen various units coming in a form of private security, who are also assisting the police to ensure that everything is contained. Throughout the day, Bredan, we have seen and heard from the people on the ground, just checking if the protest is passing by them. Others also just responding to what they're seeing on the ground, people sending pictures and videos and so on, because you would know that a lot of people in KZN are still very much scared because of what had happened in the past with the riots. So a lot of them were worried about what this could entail. However, we have seen such a peaceful march that has been ongoing here, with a lot of police, of course, ensuring that that does become very peaceful. We've also seen from some of the community members coming up and watching the march. And whilst they were watching, we were able to speak to the CPF as well, which is a reflection of what the community is thinking. And the CPF, through Imites, was saying to us that they actually have been encouraging the community to open their shops, saying that the business community must not be worried because this is a peaceful march. And they said that the people here have a right, of course, to protest. So we have seen all of that taking place. CPF also being very much visible, saying that they've been on the ground. We heard from the youth CPF, youth desk as well, which is highlighting to us that as the young people, they are concerned about electricity, they are concerned about water, they are concerned about GBV. So saying that they do echo those sentiments, but everything must be within the constraints of the law. So they are watching that goes according to plan, but also touching on the fact that in KZN, when there was riots, there were communities that went over and above the law, and they have educated the community how to control and how to work with people who are marching or protesting in this case. So we are watching that protest, Bredan, again behind me, still at a standstill. We know that they are going to move from here. M4 is not very far from here, Bredan, about 500 meters or so, where they are headed to, and they're saying that they are marching, they're continuing. But of course, because, Bredan, this is a protest action, they haven't given us the exact way in terms of which direction they are going to be moving. But the police seem to be controlling the traffic the entire time. You see there, Bredan, just on the far end, they are ensuring that there's still movement of cars in and out the city. That road that you see just a bit far, Bredan, is going towards Umhlanga, and you would know that that that's where the business unit is mainly at, and we know that there's a lot of eateries, so anyone who's going that direction is probably wanting to go enjoy themselves or to work, so they want to make sure that people are not worried about what's currently happening. But in the meantime, the protesters have, of course, decided to take a break.
Yeah, and from what you're saying there, Ngobile, correct me if I'm wrong, you've mentioned the fact that there's been encouragement from local community members like the local CPFs and the young people that business must continue. I mean, the sense is that there has been some minor disruptions here and there earlier, but nothing really hectic, so to speak, and largely it's been business as usual. Did you see any business activity along the route where this march has gone in Durban?
To be quite honest, Bradan, if you look at West Street, that's where you find quite a lot of businesses around, people who are selling clothes, selling cosmetics, all sort of things like that, especially also places like supermarkets that you see on the West Streets. All those businesses have been closed throughout that walk that we walked there. We saw that all of those businesses were closed. We saw franchise as well, where you see people buying food and so on. Those places were also closed. As we were coming up here, Britain, you see that this is the tourism sector, because this is, of course, beachfront. So a lot of people would come here as tourists, people who are deciding to take a break. And a lot of those people here, as we were passing, we saw quite a number of shops that were open, deciding to close doors and ask people to come in. We actually saw a bit of a confrontation where they went into one of the shops, that was McDonald's, where they started singing outside McDonald's, and people were inside and, of course, recording as it was happening, but still very much peaceful, Bradan. They just sang outside and continued with their march. So a little less business activity, and maybe that's an understatement, Bradan. If a whole stretch of West Street has been closed, it was definitely not business as usual. Having walked from Perea Center as well towards the West Street, we saw that all those businesses in that stretch as well were closed. So a lot of people still scared. But that's what CPF was saying, that even though people are worried, they do know that they have spoken to them, and they do know what is currently happening, saying that the protesters are peaceful, and people just need to trust that these people who are protesting have a reason to protest, and they do not want to create any sense of conflict or fights with anyone. They're just expressing their opinion, and of course that is their right within the country to do the same thing. So business not so vibrant, Bradan, but we have seen one or two of them opening up, to answer your question.
Yeah, and the traffic seems to be moving normally from where you showed us, Ellen, that intersection there on the way to Mhlanga. Thank you very much, Ngobile Madlala. Looking like things remaining calm. We stay with this story. We